Okay, this is my fourth attempt at doing this for you guys today, I think, and hopefully it will work this time. Strange noises in the background, if you can hear them, you might not be able to, I don't know, but I've got zombies being killed in the next room over, and there is also a chance of a cat walking up onto my shoulders and headbutting the microphone, so I apologise in advance if you hear me shouting at a cat. Right, forms. Quick run over of forms. So I've got this database open. I have no idea whose database this is. It's one of my Blobfish database. So I have about 5, possibly 6 of these right now. And looking at the forms I've got here, I don't have a form for entering new fish. So let's look at doing a form for entering new fish. So I'm going to make sure I've got the fish table selected. And I'm going to go to the Create tab. In the Create tab, there is a button that says Form. If I click the button that says Form, it will generate, oddly enough, a form. And what this has in it is it has all the fields from this table, which sit up here. And it also has the additional bit where it is pulling up related records. So yeah, there may also be a cat coming up and squeaking at some point as well. Please ignore the squeaking cat as well. So it gives us a basic form and it shows us every bit of information, whether or not we want to see it in there. Yeah, we're going to assume that this particular form is just for creating new fish. So we can get rid of this bottom table by clicking on it and pressing the delete button on the keyboard. And that's the one that says delete, not the backspace button. We can also get rid of the ID field. It's automatically generated. The user doesn't need to know what that ID field is. It will probably mean next to nothing to them in a lot of cases. So we can take that one out as well. From this point, I tend to find going into the design view rather than the layout view to be an easier way to work. Because in here, we can control things like extending the footer. We can make the header bigger. We can make the midsection bigger, which means that we can then resize this holder box. If we can get our mouse over it, you can resize the holder box. Okay, never mind. Or we could just drag these down, which apparently also works. And the hardest bit of this, believe it or not, is actually getting your mouse into the right place to be able to do this. And you can click and drag and move them around. I'm just going to send this back to sort of vaguely normal sizes and leave a little bit more white space at the bottom there. From there, we've got a lot of different options that we can use and that we can play around with. So start off, I'm going to go to the Design tab to start with. And in the Design tab, there are themes that we can choose from. And that will do things like change what buttons look like. It will do things like change the background for the header. It will have a set font that can be applied. You can also change the colours on their own in a drop down. And if you don't like the font that's with this theme, you can go in and you can change the font to match maybe a business model or some scenario that you've been given. You can also, if I take that out, add a logo into this. And do I even have... I have no idea what these pictures are. Let's just... oh god, they're not interesting in the slightest. That's videos, try again. So let's put this one in just because it's loaded. So if I put a logo in, it'll put it at the top. We can resize the logo so that it will fit. We can get rid of that bit because that was the title that it put in with the logo. And I'm just going to move this over, and we've got a title there that says fish. We've got a lot of different controls up here that we could put in on a form. And a lot of these we don't need to do, because a lot of these relate to formatting or doing input on a form and creating controls for the form. So if it didn't automatically generate these fields, most of these tools up here are for putting those fields in. The one that we do want from this set is going to be the button tool. And you've got a few buttons that you will need to add into this. Refer to the assignment brief for what buttons they are. So I'm just going to put one up here for a minute. So one button that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the form operations. I'm going to tell it that I want to close a form. I'm going to use the little red cross because that's what people tend to be familiar with. A little cross on the top corner. And I'm going to close this. I'm going to name this close fish form so that I know what this form is showing. And I can press finish on there. It's set the colors for the theme, and I can click and I can move it and position it up in that top corner so that it's out of the way. And you can add other buttons as well. There's a lot of different options in these that you can do. So you can go to the first record. You can go to the last record. You can save records. So if you add a new record in, for example, most people won't trust autosave. So you can put in a button that will save the record that has just been entered. Or if you are adapting a record, it will save the record and update the record. You've got form operations. So we've done close form. You can choose to print the forms. You can apply a filter to the form. You can close the form, open forms, and so on with that. You've got report operations that we don't really need to use on forms. You've got application operations. So you need to create a main menu, which is going to be built up from headers and from buttons to take you to different forms and different reports. And on your main menu, a quit application button would be a really good button to have in there. And there's a miscellaneous one, which for the purposes of testing queries and testing that forms have been passed to criteria have been passed to a query from a form, we can put that in to do the testing without having to create the report that goes along with the query first. So I'm just going to do a record navigation, and let's do go to last. Yep, I'll leave it with that picture. And we'll call this one fish go to last because that makes logical sense. So now I've got, if I don't do that, now I've got a button there, and I could have all the buttons laid out into a nice looking dashboard layout on the bottom. So go to last, next, previous, first, maybe a save button here. Might be a delete record button could go in there so that if the fish dies in this case, it can completely come out. So you can set buttons up in that. You can also give it a date and a time. Include date, include time, and when we press OK, that has given us two fields, currently disappeared and lost over on my my close button there. But that gives us a date field and a time field in there. We might need to have a bit of a play around with those. just for purposes of laying out and seeing how far apart we need them. You might only want one in there, so you might not want time. You might just want it to display today's date for the person who is accessing the form. Then we've got the format options. And the format options will work on any element, depending on what you want to have in there. So I've got the date selected still. So I can actually change this date to a long date, medium date, or short date. So I'm going to put that to a short date. I could change the background colour on this. So somewhere in here, there is a paint pot. I can fill it grey. I can fill it black. And I could have it transparent, which will give me, obviously, a see-through background. I could put a background image into this and browse for a background image. I've got all the different shape options. So maybe I want to have a border. That was a shape filled. So I can fill the shape there as well as there. I can do the shape outline. There's lots of stuff in there. You can do line thickness. And I can do a line type. So maybe we'll have that one. Okay, that's probably not good from a visually aesthetic point of view, but it serves the purpose of demonstrating. If I click so that the form header is selected, notice the background color is still there. So I can still change the background color, and I can change the background color on all of these. So I could put this one to a black background, depending on maybe what my color theme is. If I select the text here, I could maybe give it a really light blue color in there. Or I could leave it black. I could turn the font black, and I could do fill color with there and black text on the top. I could change these to do the same thing. Maybe for this, I'll have a nice light blue outline with maybe that thickness. And if you want to select more, so you do the same thing to all of them, do press Control to select them all, or Shift will also select them all. So let's just put that color back in. And then we'll have the shape fill. Let's have a shape fill black. And let's do the text in a light blue color. So I can set up something that looks like that for it. You've got your font, so you can change fonts individually if you want to. If we click on a button, we've got some quick styles that we could apply to that, or we can leave it with what it is, or we can Control Z to go backwards if we can't find the color. We can change the shape of the buttons in there as well. So we don't have to have square buttons. We could have oval buttons or round buttons. We can have buttons with cut off corners in there as well. And we've got shape effects. So we could bevel the button and give it some kind of funky button look if we want to. And most of it is just playing around with those tools. You do also have some arrange options in here. And because the forms are usually set out by default, and that default set out is pretty much what people expect to see, they tend to leave it, or I would tend to leave it as it is there. But you can have it set out as a tabular view, where you've got your fields going along the top and the results of those fields going across the bottom. I don't necessarily recommend it. That's gone excessively long. I would stay with the stacked view for that, and just maybe bring this edge back in a bit. And we might need to shorten some of these down. These are a little bit long now, so I've got all three of them. Nope, that's not what I want to do. And like I said, just getting the line up right can be a bit tricky. And let's make this back to a nice sized form. What this looks like, if I go back to my design tab up here, if I go into form view, here is my form view. We've got all the options that come up. We've got our button to go to our last record. Obviously, I've not put any other buttons in to go back. And I haven't resized this top bit of my form, which is a bit silly of me. Forgot about that bit. But that's how you would set up navigation. Oh, okay, it resized itself. That's massively unhelpful of it. Because, I wouldn't have set it to that. Never mind. Oh, there we go. So you set it up like that. There's my date, and that will change depending on the date. And test the close form button after you've tested everything else works. Because it literally, if I save the changes to the design, and let's just call it fish, press the button, it will close, and just show you that without all the save process in the middle of it. There we go. Good button to put in would be the add new record button. So at the moment, all I can do is move to one record to another. So an add new record button would be a good one to put in there. There is a little bit at the bottom to move through for the forms as well until you've done that. And like I say, a save record button would also be beneficial. Your form will not update your table if the table is open. So make sure the table is closed if you're using the form to test that adding and saving records into the table works. Make sure your table is closed first and then open the table to check. So let's say I've got a fish called Jill. I can type, and Jill has a gender of other. She has a phone number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That'll do. Now, a save record button would be obviously ideal at this point. I haven't actually put one in. So I'm just going to press the save button that's up here for the time being. And now if I open my fish table, there is Jill in that table. And that's it. That's forms. Nothing massively complicated in there.